The name of this video is why the Vita is failing and what Sony can do to get back on track. Now, I have always used Nintendo handhelds, even though I own a TurboGrafx portable and a Neo Geo Pocket and a Nomad. I've always been more of a Nintendo game, and I also have a Wonder Swan Color. But I've always been more of a Nintendo gamer. Now, despite all of this, however, I am familiar with the PSP, the PSP Go, and the Vita. Now, the Vita is failing, okay? It is dying very slowly. The reason it seems to be failing, some people will tell you it has no games. That's not exactly true. The problem with the Vita, in order to understand the problems with the Vita, you have to understand a few facts, okay? The PSP was essentially a PS1 in your hands. It was a portable handheld console, okay? The thing about that, the important thing to realize about that is that it was more powerful than a PS1, however, because it had technology had advanced to a point where the graphics were almost on par with PS2. The PS Vita is a PS2.5 in the palm of your hands. Okay, it can get a little, technology has advanced to the point where it can get close to a PS3. Like really good PS3 graphics, but that's not the issue as well. The problem with the Vita is that the Vita isn't really a handheld, it's more of a portable console. Now, some would say that Sony is the only one who did this, but if you really think about it, any console, any portable, any handheld that has reached the point where basically you can play what was once considered a console style game, or a game that was on a console solely on that handheld, without it being cut or changed in any way, is no longer just a handheld, it's a portable console. Okay, that's essentially what you have. So technically speaking, the Game Boy Advance was a handheld, but it was also a portable console. And I can prove this by saying that you could play Super Mario World on it. That was a launch game for the SNES, a console. Now, the PSP was also a portable console. It had several games that would be perfectly at home on a PS2, like Ratchet and Clank, Secret Agent Clank, I believe that was the name of that, or that weird Jack and Daxter spin-off where Daxter was basically that explained the gap, that 2-year gap in the Jack and Daxter series. Now, all of these things lead me to my second point. Now, if you're going to have a handheld console, you have to treat it like it's a console, i.e., put games worth playing on it. Now, with the Vita, we've seen a series of almost throwaway games. They got Assassin's Creed Liberation, which could be completed in about 10-15 hours. Now, 15 to 20 hours. Now, I hate to break this to you, but if you came up to me and said, here's a console game, it can be completed in 15 to 20 hours, I would laugh in your face. I mean, you're charging me $60, $50 to $60 for a title, and I'm getting very little, out of it. It's not good. That's atrocious, okay? Now, it launched with Assassin's Creed Liberation and that weird Uncharted game that used the touch screen, and people were like, "Yeah, this is fun," but it didn't really, it just didn't feel like a full-on console experience. Now, the Vita was billed as the full console experience in your hand, and the games weren't there for that. Some people will say, well, it had Gravity Rush. Gravity Rush could be beaten in 4 hours. No one is going to spend over $30 for a game they can beat in 4 hours. Nope. Nope, 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 no. With very little replayability. Now, this leads me to my third point. The Vita is dealing with a severe lack of first-party content. Now, Sony has never had the IPs that Nintendo has to push their hardware. It's always been third-party support. The original PlayStation was mostly third-party support. Yes, Sony had some pretty good IPs on it, but nowhere they didn't sell nearly as much as the third-party support did. Same with the PS2 and PS3. Now, Sony doesn't have the studio, the IP power to push the Vita right now, because they have to focus it on the PS4, and it's looking kind of doubtful if they can do that at this point in time. Now, this leads me to my caveat: what Sony could do to salvage the Vita. First of all, Sony needs to make a device, either make a new model of the Vita that does not use proprietary memory card tech, because that's killing the Vita. Okay, the proprietary memory card technology is killing the Vita. Either that, or develop a peripheral that you can plug into it and then plug a normal SD card into it. That's one of the few things I can think of. 2, actually put some unique content on the Vita that you can only get on the Vita that really highlights the Vita's abilities. And right now, the only thing that the Vita has really going for it is, in compared to its competition, and yes, the Vita's competition is the 3DS. That is its competition, and it's been getting destroyed. So its only real, technologically speaking, the Vita is more advanced, but in terms of its games library, in terms of its the quality of the games that are on it, the length of some of the games, it's got a lot of good RPGs, but RPGs alone cannot hold a system. You need a very diverse library. And what also is killing the Vita, that the 3DS has as a leg up on it, is it's not backwards compatible with PSP games, and that was a major mistake for Sony. That was a major mistake, not making it backwards compatible. Really, cannibalizes sales, because technically speaking, the 3DS has a massive, mammoth library compared. It has a library that's exponentially larger than anything that the Vita has. All because it's backwards compatible. If you want to buy a new game for your 3DS, and none of the new 3DS games that are out are really, floating your boat, you can simply go and get a DS game that you wanted it's cheaper, and you can play that. You can't do that on a Vita. You're basically stuck with whatever Vita things that are there. Now, this leads me to the third thing that Sony could do to turn around the Vita. And that is, Sony could, and this is a very big if Sony were to take a few people from their studios that they have that aren't working on Gran Turismo or whatever, and tell them to develop a new IP that would be solely on the Vita. Like, it doesn't have to be a huge big budget IP, just something meaty that can be identified with just the Vita. Not cross-play, not download and play, not a PSN download. I mean, seriously, something that could be just identified with the Vita. Nintendo has Pokemon and the handheld Zeldas and their Mario Brothers games and Staffy. Those came here to America. Strictly in Japan, they have Animal Crossing and those weird games where you create a character and live a virtual life and all that stuff. I mean, there has to be some must-have games for that system that can only be gotten on that system. The cross-play has not worked. The remote play has not worked. The Vita TV has not worked. That's the only way I can think of this system is coming back. Now, this leads me to my conclusion. If Sony can't bring it together for their Vita, I'm thinking that it would be best if they just let it go. I know the people who have Vitas are saying, no, don't do that, don't let go of the Vita, I like my Vita. I'm not saying you don't like your Vita. I'm saying that if Sony isn't going to support it with first-party games, they need to just let it go. If third-party, like Nintendo did with the Wii, third-party studios are still releasing games for the Wii. Good for them. But if Sony is not going to put the effort and energy and time into developing first-party games for the Vita, there's no point in owning one if they're not going to put must-have games on it. And I know what some people are going to say. Well, third parties are putting must-have games on it. Not really. Not really. Because Japanese gamers are still in droves buying 3DSs. I think if you gave a Japanese gamer, it's like, you can have this 3DS XL or you can have this Vita, they take the 3DS XL 9 times out of 10. I'm thinking, the way the numbers are looking. So, what I'm saying is that, in conclusion, if they're not going to support the Vita, they just need to drop it. Because Sony, monetarily speaking, doesn't have they can't afford to support, right now they've launched their newest console. They're going to be operating at a loss, okay, for the next year and a half, okay, if all things go as normal in console launches. Well, considering it's Sony, 2.5 years, okay, they can't afford to be operating a loss on their main console and then operating a loss on their handheld. They can't do it. They can't do it. And the Vita is very expensive to make. Even with the new versions of it, it's very expensive to make. They can't afford it. And, for people who say, well, they shouldn't drop it, yeah, but they the Vita is... The Sony handheld is a side gig. It's not their main thing. They could easily drop it and just stick with their home console, which would probably be better for them. But this is just my opinion. If you don't like it, sue me. Well, don't sue me, but, you get the gist. If you don't like it, too bad. This is just my opinion. A little bit of news before I leave. There is a live stream going on where I will be basically giving my thoughts about various parts of the VGX as I'm watching it on Steam or YouTube or whatever. So basically, I hope you people will enjoy it alongside with me, and we shall discover what how things are going to drop as they go down. Thank you and have a good night.